Hello, welcome back to the Janome YouTube channel. I'm Janome maker Michael, and today my tutorial is going to be how to make a winter cloak similar to the one that I have here. I really think it's a shame that we don't have more cloaks in fashion. They were so popular in the 60s and any time before, and then sleeves came in and we just had to have sleeves on everything. But I'm seeing a lot of capes come back on the runway, which I think is really exciting, and I love wearing these out and about. It makes life more whimsical and fun, and I get a lot of compliments on it, and so I thought that I would show you how I go about making a cape and give some tips and tricks that maybe you'll find helpful. Where I made this cape out of gray and green wool, I'm going to be making a cape today out of this beautiful black wool twill that I got in Mood Fabrics. So that was a fun adventure. My wife Haley and I went to Mood when we were in New York City for New York Comic Con in October of 2021. So I've been holding on to this for about 2 years. So I'm really excited to make something with it finally. Living in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're in a bit of a fabric desert. We have a lot of upholstery fabric, but not a lot of apparel fabric. So getting the opportunity to go to the garment district and shop around in the fabric stores was really a lot of fun for us. And I really wanted to get something, and just whatever I brought home, I would make something out of it. And I'm finally doing that today with this wool twill with these tiny blue sequins in it that kind of look like little raindrops on the shoulders or little snowflakes. And so can't wait to finally use it today. In addition to the black wool twill with the tiny little sequins that I'll be using for the shell of the cape, I'll also be using this dark blue kind of corduroy fabric for the facings, the collar, the armhole covers, and the neck tab. Then I'll be using this fabric that my sister got for me in Thailand for the inside of the lining. I think that'll look really nice. The cape pattern that I use most often, and you can tell because of the state of it, is this Simplicity, oh gosh, what even is it? It's 9211, a vintage Simplicity cape pattern. I really like this one because it is so simple. It's only a couple pieces. The cape is only made out of 3 pieces, the front side, and the back. It comes with a mandarin collar, which today we're going to be changing that, and it comes with armholes, which I really like because if you're wearing a cape and you have no armholes, then you need to reach something, you need to drive a car, you need to eat your food, you're going to have to take your cape off because the armholes really are helpful. So I like this one a lot. There are so many sewing patterns out there available for capes, and even though a lot of them are modeled with women, guys, please don't be afraid of that. Capes are gender neutral, and so any kind of cape that appeals to you is definitely something that you can check out. My biggest piece of advice when it comes to capes is getting it right in the shoulders. If it fits you well in the shoulders, then it's going to look really good on because it all comes downwards from the shoulders. I like this pattern a lot because these points really hit the shoulders here at the triangles on me. For other people, it might be slightly different. So if you can get it right in the shoulders and work your way down from there, then you're doing great. I think the other thing that's fun about capes is getting to play with the collar. And so I've drafted this collar myself. This is a large collar pattern. This is the pattern that I used for the cape that showed at the beginning of the video. This pattern came with a mandarin collar, which is just a short, tiny little collar, but you can do lapels. I've done capes with tuxedo collars. I've done all kinds of different looks to just change up the way that the collar looks. And so don't be afraid to play around. You can Frankenstein collars from other patterns, mix and match all kinds of things. This works basically just like a suit jacket. This opens up here and folds over, so you can make all kinds of different lapels. So you can play around with it and do whatever you want. I've also shortened this pattern by simply folding it up. This is cutting about maybe 4 inches off of the length of the cape. I like it where it hits right at my knee. If you'd like something a little longer, then you can play around with the length as well. It just eats up a little more fabric the longer you make the cape. And as we lay out the pattern pieces, we'll want to pay a special attention to these little dots here, because these, as we're going to see in a little bit, are going to be the armholes. And so we'll want to note where those are, maybe creating special notches, maybe in the seam allowance a little bit, just so we'll know exactly where those are when we take the pattern off. Paying close attention to grain lines, I've used this little chalk pen that I found on Amazon and outlined the whole pattern, including the notches, so that I can remove the pattern and simply cut along those lines. Also be sure to mark any pattern markings such as darts. You can do that again with the chalk if you like, but make sure we do that before we put the pattern away. We'll still need those. Once we have the shell pieces cut, we can use the same pieces to cut out the facings and the lining. For this cape, I'm having the shell fabric be the under collar, while the blue is going to be the visible over collar on top. And this is why you should always measure out everything ahead of time, because I don't have enough of this silk fabric to do the lining of the cape, so I'll have to pick something else from the hoard. So instead, I'm using this very lovely royal blue satin from Shannon Fabrics. Already loving how the blue accentuates the blue of the sequins, and then this blue lining really did work out. This is going to be really lovely altogether. And before sewing, we'll give everything a nice press on the wool setting so that we can have nice smooth pieces before we start sewing. Loading up my Continental M8. And when pinning, remember that we'll want to leave a nice gap for the armhole. We'll backstitch at each of those spots and then continue on down to the hem. The pattern calls for a 5/8 seam allowance, so we'll be using that mark on our plate for a nice even stitch all the way down. Then pressing open the seam as well as the seam for the armhole. And we'll continue stitching until we have a nice finished shell. For the darts along the back of the neck, we've marked that from the pattern, creating that little triangle, and then pinning it, folding it in half, starting at the top, and then working our way till we get just on the tip of the triangle, right at the edge of the fabric. There, we should have a nice clean dart. We can slash down till about there with some scissors to open it up, and then press it so that we have a nice smooth space. An iron will smooth that out. You can even do it with my finger, so it's looking pretty good. And since darts are there to help create curves on the body, I like to take a tailor's ham, lay it out nice and flat, take my iron and give it some good press, especially down there at the bottom of the seam, so that we get nice and smooth darts with no puckers at the bottom. I'm cutting a 3-inch wide piece of fusible interfacing to the inside of the facing of the cloak so that it can have stability, especially up at the tip of the collar, but just lots of stability through the entire front of the cape. And now I'll sew the lining the same way that I sewed the shell. Adding my custom clothing label. I'm now pinning the back of the collar onto the lining. This will be on the underside, so not visible when the collar is folded, and I'm doing it in the shell fabric to create a nice contrast with the collar. And then pressing the seam allowance of the collar underneath to the lining, going to do an understitch so that the collar will stay nice and firm along the neckline. I've also applied some fusible interfacing to the back of the fashion collar, and so I'm going to pin that along the neckline of the shell. And then again, I'm understitching the seam allowance underneath the collar to help create support. All right, so now I have pinned on my collar. I decided that I was going to use contrasting colors, so I have the pattern piece that's going to be on top connected to the lining, and then the pattern piece that's going to be folded over, so the underside of the collar is going to be attached to the shell, because this is going to be folded over and not visible most of the time. I'm also understitching the seam allowance toward the left, pressing that, and then creating a stitch line just at the edge so that the seam allowance will stay pressed down once the garment is assembled. Now comes the exciting part where we stitch all the way around the edge of the cape, leaving the hem open so we can turn it inside out and do a hem later. And we're going to do the armhole, so don't worry about that. We're just sewing all the way around like a pillowcase. Clip the corners of the collar,
And so to finish off the edges, I like to do a top stitch, maybe like a 1/2 inch or so from the edge. So I've wonder clipped all the way around the edge, and I'm going to be doing blue thread on top, black thread underneath, so that we're nice and matching all the way around. So now I have the cape on my dress form. It's so exciting to see it start to come together. So I told you we're gonna do the armholes. So we've got the armholes pinned here. So what I've done is pinned the lining, so seeing that from the inside, pinned the lining to the outside of the armholes, and there's tons of options to finish this. You could what I'm going to do is whip stitch it from behind. I mean, you could put plackets over this. You could do like a welt pocket situation thing. You could put decorative trim around the edge. I mean, however you want to do it. I'm really enjoying how kind of sleek and black and everything this looks. So I don't really want to disturb the design of the cape with a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're going to be hand stitching right along the inside of that. So kind of tucking this back so that the blue doesn't poke through the armhole. I'm going to hand base stitch that to really keep it secure while I'm sewing, and then take it off the dress form onto my sewing table and hand stitch from the inside, probably using a whip stitch to close off that armhole. And I should add, the reason I put it on the dress form is so that it will hang naturally, like it's coming off of the shoulders and like the curve of the chest and everything coming down. And so if I laid this flat on the table, things might shift up and down, but basting it, and I've hand basted it, basting it on the dress form allows everything to hang as it's naturally going to on the body. And so when I do the hem, I'll do the same thing. I will put it on the dress form and then hand baste so where everything is supposed to be before sewing it. Just to keep everything how it's actually going to be on me rather than something flat and two-dimensional. So I've done one side and just wanted to show you what it looks like. So I hand stitch it from the inside so that there won't be a top stitch along this armhole. Everything will stay nice and smooth. And I've pressed it, and so it looks very nice. It's almost kind of invisible if you didn't know it was there. And now it's time to do the other side. And then the last step will be hemming. Again, I've done this on the dress form so that I can be sure that the hem is hanging in the correct way on my dress form, on my body, using a lot of wonder clips. And now I'm just going to do an overstitch all the way around the edge to finish it off. And here we have the finished cape. I'm so happy with how it came out. I really like the blue lapels, the blue collar, and the blue lining on the inside. And this fabric was so light and beautiful and fun to work with its teeny tiny sequins. They look like little raindrops or little snowflakes. And it's a pretty light wool. So again, go crazy, be creative, use whatever kind of fabric you want to do, any kind of weight, any kind of length. It is your cape. Have fun and enjoy the process. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it inspirational for making your own cape or other fun winter garment. You can check out Janome's YouTube channel for lots of other tutorials, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at The Wizard Tailor. I'll see you there. Bye.